And we're live. Welcome everybody here to the Lakers Lounge. I'm Anthony Irwin for this happy hour, this Friday happy hour episode. What I did before I went live, and I gave the people I sent this link to a few minutes to hop on here, and we'll see if they do wind up hopping on over the course of the show. But I sent our lounge VIPs a link, a StreamYard link that allows you to be on this show with me. If you are interested in doing that, go ahead, hit the subscribe button, and then also look a little to the right, I believe, and you can find another link that allows you to take part in these episodes as well. I believe it costs like $2 or $3 a month or something like that if you want to do that. As it stands, the way this is going to work out, I'm going to, while we wait for, an audience or while we wait for participants, I'm going to look at the month ahead. And I told myself before I went live, maybe a good idea to pull up said schedule. Did I? You bet your ass I didn't, but it is now pulled up. So I'm going to look at that schedule. I also asked Twitter for some questions, so I'll be going to Twitter to answer some of your questions. I also, as I do every week, am going to look at the iTunes mailbag to see if you guys have any questions there that you would like covered. And I will get to those. Those will take priority over everything else, as is usually the case. And I will answer those questions first, and then maybe take some from Twitter. And then if you guys have any questions or comments here, if you're watching live, I'll answer those as well. Again, this is a brand new version of this. I am building this airplane mid-flight, so we will see how this thing goes over the course of the next, 20, 30 minutes or so before I get you out of here. Another reminder also, I am now Lakers insider for Lakers Daily. So as soon as I hop off of here, I'm going to hop on to, I'm going to stay on my computer and write this weekend's column that will look ahead to this March and do offer up some exclusive reporting on everything that is at stake based on the way that this month goes. And then, obviously from there, over the course of the weekend and certainly on Sunday, I will do some, I'll offer up a couple more tidbits that, offer a little more context to the reporting that I do in that piece that will hopefully drop sometime this evening or tomorrow morning. All right. That is all of the, I guess I should also say, please do hit that subscribe button here on YouTube for those of you who are watching live. If you're watching on Twitter, please do head on over to, youtube.com/@Lakers Lounge, where you could find this show and hit that subscribe button there. If you are watching, or if you guys are listening after this drops in audio form, please do hit that subscribe button. And I will hit that subscribe button wherever you get your podcast. You can find this there, and obviously, preferably on Odyssey. It looks like we have our first guest, although the device is not connected. So, Laker Pete, once your device is up and running, I will bring you on stage, and we will talk it out however you want to, whatever you want to have covered, or whatever part of the conversation you want to discuss. We can get to that. And the first question I guess I should probably have here, Kirk Henderson, friend of the show, host of Pod Maverick, I believe still editor of Mavs Moneyball. Yeah, he is. Asking if I will come to his birthday party. Yeah, I will. And if you want, I can dress up as Joker. All right. So let's look at the schedule, which is pretty daunting here in March. I'm going to, I have it pulled up for myself, but I may as well grab the extent of it on, here from ESPN, or maybe it's best to pull it up in calendar form. Lakers schedule Let's see if we can go to, there we go. Come on, now let's go March. Man, I would like to be able to look at the calendar version of it, not this huge list. All right, so I guess I'll just go ahead and grab the screen grab that I grabbed and, look at it that way. And here it is. It's going to be a little iffy on the screen, but I will run through those games with you. Is that? Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I will remove this banner and we will go through these games starting Saturday. The Lakers play against Denver. And then throughout the entirety of March, the Lakers will play 2 games against teams that are not currently in the play-in or playoff as it stands. Now, Atlanta could fall out. Brooklyn could jump in. But the only 2 games that the Lakers are going to be playing this month against non-playoff or play-in teams are against the Memphis Grizzlies, a team that the Lakers have already lost to this season, and against the Brooklyn Nets, another team that the Lakers have already lost to this season. Both those games are going to be on the road, and they come at the end of the month after the Lakers will have played against the likes of Denver, Oklahoma City, Milwaukee, Minnesota, Golden State. Like, the only kind of respite that comes against those playoff or play-in teams is probably Philly because of the whole Embiid injury situation. But that is a brutal schedule, right? That's why you had to take care of business in January. Fortunately, the Lakers did take care of business in February, where I believe they went 9-3 in February, which is a great month, especially given the expectations going into it. Weird how all of a sudden the Lakers would have a 9-3 month after they started playing more of the guys from last year's title or Western Conference Finals run. You would never have seen that coming. I could not possibly have seen that coming. But yeah, that March schedule that the Lakers have in front of them is super daunting, and it is not, the Lakers are not going to have. We'll look at it again. The Lakers have, let's see. It doesn't look like the Lakers have they have one back-to-back. So they go, they play at Milwaukee on Tuesday, March 26th, and then they play in Memphis the second night of a back-to-back after playing the Milwaukee Bucks. So I guess that's fortunate. It is, fairly West Coast heavy, right? Even if the Lakers aren't playing all of their games at home, but they're playing at home against Denver, they're playing at home against OKC, at home against Sacramento, at home against Milwaukee, and at home against Minnesota. Then they stay in California to play at Sacramento. Then they go back home to play Golden State, at home against Atlanta, at home against Philly, at home against Indiana. And then they head back out onto the road where they'll play at Milwaukee, at Memphis, at Indiana, and at Brooklyn. So I guess if you're looking for kind of positives here, you are not leaving the state of California until, March 24th, after they play the Indiana Pacers and head out onto the road for a quick little road trip against Milwaukee, Memphis, Indiana, and Brooklyn. Still, given the situation that the Lakers are in and given the standings as they currently look, where you look at it and the Lakers currently stand in the 9 spot because of, winning percentages and stuff like that. The Lakers are currently 33-28. The Golden State Warriors have 1 fewer loss, but have played so many fewer games that the Lakers are technically a spot ahead of them. The Lakers are in the 9 spot, and they are 3 losses behind Dallas and Sacramento, both of whom, are going to be playing like their lives are on the line here as well. So hopefully the Lakers do enough to stay, to jump up into those 7 or 8 spots. So that means you technically only have to win 1 game to move into the playoffs. But if you, if you stay in that 9 or that 10 spot, especially the 10 spot, you have to win 2 road games to get into actually still the 9 spot. No, 9 spot, you play against the 10 the 10 seed, and you technically have a home game, and then you would play a road game to see if you can get into the 8 seed. But for that 10 spot, right, you play You would probably play at Golden State. And then you would probably play, the loser of playing either of those teams on the road. And there's just no easy path there to the playoffs. And then after that, you would wind up playing, one of Minnesota, OKC, or Denver, right? Who would probably be in that one seed, and it's just the Lakers have a lot of work ahead of them, and it starts with this March. And before and I'll write about this over the weekend. I'm really fascinated to see kind of what is at stake for the interested parties here, right? Not just Darvin Ham, who I know people are really curious about, but also like the very concept of the way that the Lakers built out their roster this year, with the focus being depth, right? Would the Lakers, like, if they do fare well in this March gauntlet that they have facing them, would that be enough to let them, convince them to, uh, pursue that path again this offseason? If things go poorly, would the Lakers then trade that depth for a third star? Something that we know that the Lakers are interested in doing anyway. Would that be enough to push them over the hump and definitely pursue that path there? I'm really fascinated by how this is all going to play out. And once we start seeing the kind of basketball that the Lakers would play in that run, we'll, I guess, see what comes of it. We do have a super comment, so I will go ahead and get to that. Brandon Oeming writes after I play the super important clip. Brandon Oeming writes, imagine a lineup of AR, KCP, Vando, Braun, and AD with AC and Rui off the bench. Losing KCP and AC really hurt. I mean, if you're doing that, then you may as well include Kuz in there, right? Although I don't know the path that you would have to getting Vando, because it was, I'd have to, yeah. So was it? Yeah, it was KCP and Kuz in that Russ trade, and Harrell, I think, too, right? And which is just, I think Raj called it diabolical last night. So if I don't think it's possible for you to have Vando on this roster as well, with KCP, but that type of player. But basically, like, imagine having AR, KCP, Kuz, Braun, and AD with AC and Rui off of the bench. You would probably swap AR and AC there. And you wouldn't have, I guess you could technically have Rui, because the Lakers signed Kendrick Nunn and then traded Kendrick Nunn for Rui Hachimura, right? Kendrick Nunn and, like, I think another contract or something like that, and some second rounders was what it took to get Rui. So you technically could have Rui on that team. But yeah, that lineup of, Caruso and KCP and Kuz, Braun, and AD, like, that won you a championship, and you could have had a version of it. Like, the what if that I would love to know about is, and Schroeder played well enough, and that team started really well when they still had Marc Gasol. Like, a great what if is, what happens if Marc Gasol never gets COVID? But also, interesting there, that summer after they traded for Dennis Schroeder, they made a promise to Schroeder that he would start in those games, and that forced Caruso to the bench, a role that he was fine in, I guess. But I think the Lakers actually would have been better if you swapped Schroeder and Caruso, and you aligned Caruso's minutes with LeBron, and then you aligned Schroeder's minutes with that second unit, and you would still have some overlap there between Schroeder and LeBron. But I think it's still statistically true that of all of the players that LeBron has ever played with, the player that he has the highest net rating with is still Alex Caruso, because nobody since has topped that number. And obviously, before the Lakers let him walk in free agency, that was the case. So yeah, like I anything to get those guys on the court more, basically, is what I was interested in while Caruso was on that team. And Obviously, we saw how that played out. But yeah, that roster, and you still could have been able to draft Max Christie because the Lakers just bought a second round pick, and they could have still brought him in there without affecting any of the assets that the Lakers had at the time. You would have an extra first round pick, I believe, at least to work with, because you didn't, the Lakers traded draft capital on top of Kuz, KCP, and Harrell for Russell Westbrook. You could have used Harrell's expiring on something else to improve that roster. That Russell Westbrook trade, like a lot of smart people who I don't necessarily fully disagree with, think that basically sunk the LeBron James and AD era and made it so that like that closed their window shut. I think there's still a bit of a crack, but the Lakers are going to have to be smarter than they've been even since the Russ trade to force that crack open even further and further and further. But yeah, that's a great hypothetical. It would have been an incredible roster. All right, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the iTunes mailbag here. I have one question from it. A reminder: the best way to ensure your questions get answered or your topics get covered here on the show. And by the way, again, if you guys are VIP, check your inbox and follow the StreamYard link that you got to come on here. Laker Pete, if you're still there watching, just try and see if you can fix your device and be able to come on stage. And once I see that your device is connected, I will bring you on stage. But the question that I have here from the iTunes mailbag from Bruin Writer 78, this is a bit of a long one. So, all right. Essentially, the question is Darvin Ham actually the worst coach in Lakers history? And, provides context to Luke Walton's tenure. It provides context to Byron Scott's tenure, and also takes into account Mike D'Antoni's tenure and compares it to what Darvin Ham has done so far in his time with the Lakers. And look, I tweeted it out. I feel strongly that way. I do not have any reason to have changed my mind on whether or not Darvin Ham is the worst coach I've ever seen. That includes Del Harris, right? That includes, like, you can go on down the line. I don't think any Lakers coach ever would have let LeBron sit on the sideline there with him as long as LeBron did last night in an absolutely critical, like, must-win game, as he let timeouts expired that would have allowed LeBron to get into the game. That was it was befuddling. It was insane. It was like, I was getting texts from Lakers people about it. Like, what is going on here? Not obviously not people directly affiliated with the team. They were busy with the game or whatever, but people kind of loosely affiliated with the people connected with the Lakers there were like, what is going on? And it's been like that all year. Like, people are just kind of scratching their head at the way that Darvin has handled the season. And I will be writing over the course of this weekend, or as soon as I'm off of the air here today, I will be writing about some of the stuff that I've heard lately about the locker room and about the way that the organization feels about Darvin Ham. So please do keep an eye out for that at LakersDaily.com. But yeah, I think if you want to compare him to Luke Walton, I think Luke had his problems too, right? The way that he used Brook Lopez and the way that he used Julius Randle pissed both of those guys off to the extent that they both left for nothing in free agency. Brook Lopez was so frustrated with his usage with the Lakers that at one point, Harrison and I joked about this, but it really did happen. He walked back into the locker room, came out with a towel over his head, and sat there on the bench with a towel over his head. Some think that he was crying. Some think that he was just just that kind of frustrated that he couldn't really talk to anybody. But that was like the moment that relationship basically ended, and he played out his time with the Lakers and was professional nonetheless, and said all the right things afterward. But when I got to Vegas and I was hoping that the Lakers would be able to bring him back, one of the first conversations I had there with somebody with knowledge of the situation was like, "Oh, no, no, no. Brooks gone. He hated the Lakers. He hated Luke. He is gone, gone." And obviously, we saw how that played out. And then you go to like Byron Scott. Obviously, Byron, had way lower expectations. His job was basically to make sure that Kobe got as many shots as he possibly could, and allow Kobe to finish out his career in with a bang, and he clearly was very good at that. He also, though, was in charge of developing the young guys, and I don't think you're going to be a very good developmental coach when you are telling those young guys that they have to earn the right to talk to you, as he stated publicly. That is not a report. That is something that actually happened. I think this is he's probably the closest to him, in my opinion. I think for me, it goes like Ham is the worst, then Byron, then Luke. Very clear, like closely bunched together. But like, I don't know what we were supposed to expect of Byron, given that the point was to lose as much as possible back then, so that the Lakers could keep their draft capital. And he did that, right? Like, given the task at hand, he did that very, very well. And we saw how that played out. But with Darvin here, of those three guys, he had the highest expectations of any of those three guys coming into a season. He was also equipped with the best roster of any of those three guys, and has been, I would say, as or more frustrating as both of those guys were at their worst. And I don't like, if you're given better tools and come out with just as frustrating a product, that means you have been worse at your job than those other two guys were. That's the math that I would do there. All right, I am going to, and now Brian Fritz. So Brian is a member. I have a membership to the channel, but I didn't get an email with a StreamYard link. Should I have received one? No worries. I know you're working everything out. Check your YouTube notifications. If it isn't in your actual email inbox, you should have gotten a link somewhere to it, or just check the channel and you should have access to a post. There should be a post column or a post drop down, and there you would find the link that you could follow here. All right. If I think I know you're on Twitter, Brian, give me your and I will DM you the link if you really want to come on the stage, and I'll figure the YouTube aspect of this out later. All right, so I'm going to go to Twitter, where I asked for some questions and see what you guys came up with. I have a couple here. Johnny at Johnny DFS is asking, what TV show do you think is the most comparable to this Lakers season so far, and including how do you think it ends? Off the top of the head, I would probably say Veep. So here's why. The thing with Veep was that you had the people at the very top of those like kind of workflows, and they were all idiots, right? And you had, like, the further down the chain that you went, kind of the more competent people became, and they were only allowed to be so competent as their bosses allowed them to be, or as competent as their bosses actually were. And I think that, like, this season, you have, people who have done their jobs well enough who have been limited by the people who are making actual decisions, right? So an example would be a role player on this roster who, we'll say like Max Christie. Max Christie kind of reminds me of um, gosh, I can't believe I'm forgetting her name. She gave one of my favorite speeches of all time, but like kind of the second in command to Selena in that show, and um, and and the with her, she gave this incredible speech to Selena. I forget her last name was, but she was basically like, you are the reason women are not going to be allowed to be president from now on. They're going to point to you and be like, we tried it and it sucked and we are not going to go back to that again. And, I think that can be applicable to some other aspects of this organization as well. But I also think that like Max is kind of looking at like the coaching staff above him. It's like, I can't get minutes over that guy. Right. Like I can't, I just watched Torian Prince take a contested 19-footer with 17 seconds on the shot clock and ruin a whole bunch of momentum, and I can't get minutes over that guy. I just watched D'Angelo Russell let like the 33rd person dribble right by him without even making a basketball move, and I can't get minutes out there. And I just, I think you can say that. Yeah, exactly. Some like the step back three over Bol that got blocked. Like if I'm Max Christie and I get pulled every single time, like I blink incorrectly on a basketball court, I would watch Torian Prince take that shot and be like, I could do that. I haven't taken anywhere near as stupid a shot all season. And that guy never gets benched until recently, I guess. And I just think like, I don't know. The thing that I loved about Veep was that it indicated that everybody was incompetent. And I think when everybody, but like say for maybe a couple people here and there, was like super duper incompetent basically in Washington. And and like I just think it was really eye-opening for me. Not actually eye-opening because it didn't actually change anything. I always believed that of the people who were in our government, but I it was really eye-opening in the way that I was like I was laughing, but like balling my fist as I was laughing at how incompetent it feels like Washington is. And then like you come to find out through experience after watching that show that Washington is actually that incompetent all the time. And and yeah, like that's just where things currently stand. The next question that I got from Jeff Murphy is asking, for a mom and pop operation such as the Lakers, what will it take for them to open up the pocketbook and spend real money on a top tier medical staff? Are they understaffed and underqualified as the front office? Are they as understaffed and underqualified as the front office? This is where I'm going to be a little careful because I'm not a doctor and I don't know like what I plan on doing this off season, and it's going to be like a bigger project. But what I plan on doing this summer is really digging into how the Lakers compare at every single level to the rest of the league. I can tell you going into that project that the Lakers are very thin compared to everybody else in the league. And I do think that the spending power that Jeannie Buss doesn't have compared to some, especially the newer owners, is like that's one of the places that you really get hit in that like the Lakers generate enough revenue that they should be able to print enough money to hire the best at every single position throughout the organization. But they choose not to do that because that doesn't directly improve your revenue. And it is an indirect improvement as the better that your team gets, the more revenue that you're going to generate from deeper playoff runs, regular season wins, and all of those things. But it doesn't directly improve your revenue in the same way that like employing LeBron or employing Anthony Davis or employing Russell Westbrook did. And that's why they jumped at the chance to bring in Russell Westbrook, but don't always jump at the chance to bring in the best person in those non-basketball roles. All right, we have our first lounge VIP hopping on stage here. It is Brian Fritz. Brian, thank you very much for hopping on, man.
Oh, thanks for having me, man. Enjoy your work and been following you for a while. So I'm glad that, You're doing this, and we figured out the technology, and it's actually working.
So far, so good. I'm talking to you right now with my fingers crossed. So
Yeah.
hopefully that works. That super high caliber technological advancement of crossing fingers is enough to make this work. But what did you want to talk about today? Do you have a any thoughts or questions, or where do you want to go?
Yeah, sure. A couple of things. I mean, as a Laker fan, my God, can we all get some kind of medication or something? Because these last couple of years have just been just ridiculous on our health. Um, you know, everybody talks about like where the Lakers are this year compared to last year, but I think there's a big discrepancy in that not only is there like a health thing, but also look at the identity of the team last year, where it was more defensive oriented. And
Yeah,
then look at the identity of the team this year, which I know you can put excuses on injuries, like I said, but at the same time, there is no defensive identity on this team right now.
yeah.
And whether you want to say it's because they don't have Vando or they don't have Gabe or whatever you want to put on it, I mean, that identity is not there. And in a league, in a year specifically, where offense dominates so much, that's where the Lakers need that identity. Where they need to be at that differential, I think, to where they
Yeah.
could actually have a chance to go on a run like they did last year. I mean, anytime you have LeBron and AD, you have that chance, I guess. But I think it's even more difficult than what they did last year because they're not playing defense. I mean, they're just not. I mean, even if you gave up 110 per night, I'd feel pretty good about it because their offense is good enough, to handle that, I think. But just right now, I mean, there is no defense, and it takes so much for them to even do some of that. And they don't conjure it up every night. I mean, we all know this team ebbs and flows and is all over the place. You never know what you're going to get on a night to night basis.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to like the lack of an identity aspect of it, but I think a lot of these guys have allowed all of that other noise, all of the noise that has been going on all season to really impact their effort level, right? And the example that I use, or I think the best example of this is probably Rui, in that if Rui is scoring, if he's like if he's watching the basket go through, he's being physical on offensive boards, he's cutting, he's setting good hard screens, he's defending, and all of those things. But as soon as that scoring goes away, he's just gone. Right? He just completely flounders and he completely loafs around out there, and he becomes a significantly worse player. And I think you could probably say the same of D'Angelo Russell over the course of the year. I thought at the beginning of the season, he was doing a really good job of focusing on the small things. And then over the course of the year, as tends to happen, he fell back onto some bad habits that have formed over the course of now, what is it, like a 7-year career somehow? Um, I think you could say same even about Austin, right? Who was already not particularly well equipped physically to be a great defender, but as his role has kind of waxed and waned, he also hasn't been as consistent defensively in the way that he needs to be. And if those are half of your best players there, right? Well, no matter how you want to rank them, those guys are all in the top 5 or 6 players that the Lakers have. If half of those top 6 players are not going to be playing defense, you aren't going to be good defensively.
Yeah, and there's so much pressure on AD right now to cover
Oh
up
my
for
gosh.
everybody. And like if you had just, I mean, a little bit better perimeter defense, and I think this goes into the frustrations that I know you have and a lot of other Laker fans have in that the refusal to play Max more. And
Yeah.
I mean, and plus, I mean, we saw what happened earlier this year when it came to the rotations of Rui. So Rui's all over the place, and now he's in the starting lineup, on a regular basis. At least
Yep.
that's something. But with Max, he's been all over the place again this season to where he can't get any kind of flow or kind of normalcy of what his role is going to be.
I'm really curious what happens with Max's free agency. I get
Yeah.
the sense that he really, really wants to be a free agent, but the Lakers have also probably cost him a whole bunch of money because he's good enough to be like one of those guys who heading into restricted free agency, there'd be conversations about like, I wonder what he's going to get. Is that guy going to get an offer and all of those things? And I'm really curious. He's a quiet guy. The Lakers love him in terms of personality. But I do kind of wonder if like everybody has a breaking point, and I'm really
Oh, yeah.
curious what his free agency is going to look like because, like like last night, I lost my mind when when Darvin was asked about Cam Reddish, and why he only played 4 minutes, and he was like, "Well, that's why we went to Max," and I'm like, "That's what it takes to get to Max Christie is Cam Reddish getting hurt again." When all Max has done, the only time Max hasn't been available was when he was legitimately hurt, right? Remember, he sprained his ankle and missed some time this year. There hasn't been a situation there where it was like he's in and out of the lineup with like pain tolerance and whatever kind of ambiguity that we've seen from some other guys, i.e. Cam. Yeah, I'm really fascinated by how that goes. And again, like, it doesn't matter what scheme you have. You are only going to be as good defensively as your personnel. And, you could have a tremendous scheme out there, but if you have 5 D'Angelo Russells trying to defend, then that scheme isn't going to be great, right? And you do have to sometimes improve scheme with personnel.
So Spencer Dinwiddie is not a defensive stopper. Is that what you're saying?
He's being used as one,
right?
like last night they were doing offense to defense subs, and Spencer was the defensive one. I've never seen anything like it.
It was crazy. Crazy. Let me bring up 2 other things. And I mean, and I don't want to be a Debbie Downer, and some of this goes into next season, but just things I was thinking about. You were talking about in the off season, like how fascinating it's going to be what the Lakers do if they go star hunting again. Well, and that would have to give up their depth, which would go against that. But here's the thing too, like you would think that D'Lo would almost have to be involved in that, which would mean he would have to pick up his option, knowing he's going to be traded and couldn't control his fate. But the other thing is too, you would think that maybe Rui would have to be involved. Okay, how many teams want Rui with 2 years left? And I know people go, well, it's only 2 years. It's still 2 years, at 35, 36 million.
In this new CBA, that really matters.
Yeah, or Gabe Vincent. And that's another 2 years, at 21 million dollars, whatever it's going to be. So it's not like they're going into the last year of their deal. They still have 2 years left. So I don't know how many teams are going to want that. And like you mentioned, I mean, you're going to have to stack up like 3 guys, and one of them might even have to be, Austin. I mean, other teams are going to prefer to have him as well as part of the deal. So that's going to be a lot to give up when it comes to arguably your 3rd best player plus depth. So that's going to be difficult. And let me bring up one other thing for next season too, that I was thinking about. Everybody's always worried about the injuries for AD and LeBron, and rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
If you thought it was bad thinking about they've been healthy so far this year for the most part, but next year is going to be even more difficult because they're both likely going to play in the Summer Olympics. So if you think you're worried about the health of LeBron and AD after they had a whole off season where they could train and rest and do whatever, what's it going to be like next year when they're going to play in the Summer Olympics? Not as much rest, not as much training. They're going to put more mileage on their bodies. I'm not saying that they're going to be, and travel, all of those things. That's all going to play. And then right after the Olympics, hey, guess what? We got a brand new season.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'm going to be honest. I hadn't even considered the Olympics because it's so far, like there's so many other things.
Oh, there's been times already this year. I've already been looking ahead to next year. I'm just like, what? I got to correct myself here. And then they drag you back in. You're just like, right. I'm like,
I think the question about the depth is an important one, and it's why this season has been so frustrating to me, because that to me is the way that modern teams are going to be built moving forward, right? It is really difficult under this new CBA to have 3. They did it on purpose. It is really difficult to have 3 stars and fill out the rest of the roster with, NBA talent, unless you're willing to just zoom right past that second apron, which the Lakers are not willing to do. And so, if the Lakers are essentially and practically hard capped by that second apron, and you have 3 contracts that are taking up 90 or 85 to 90% of that hard cap space, and then now you're trying to fill out the rest of your roster there, I just don't know how that team is even going to look. And I think, talking about the depth and all of that stuff, that's actually been a process that has been, I think, undercovered, is how quietly the Lakers went from one of the most expensive rosters in the league to like kind of falling down that list kind of steadily to this point where they are now under the second apron. They are hard capped, and going into this upcoming offseason, there is like no fat on their roster. There is no movable contracts that doesn't impact your rotation directly. And, I know that people got annoyed with how often I was bringing it up in the offseason, this last offseason, but it is really useful to have a bunch of fat on your books, especially expiring fat, so that you can add to the talent pool on your roster. What the Clippers have done basically since Ballmer got there is, yeah, they have their rotation, they have their core, Paul George, Kawhi, Zubats, and so on from there, right? But what they've also done is they've also made sure to always have a bunch of just, $6 to $10-ish million expiring contracts, so that when it comes time to, add to the roster or keep their bottom line high as it possibly can be. It's like pro sports. I'm a Dodgers fan. I know that the Dodgers are always going to be an elite team because they are willing to spend more than anybody else out there, even more than the Yankees now. Like, the Yankees are cheap under the new ownership. And I understand that, like, that applies to basketball too. You have a soft cap. The more that you spend, the better that your team is going to be, or the greater your margin for error is going to be. And this season, I thought, has really kind of put on display how that lack of margin for error by trimming all of that fat really applies to a season where Jared Vanderbilt can't sink your season. Like, I love Vando. I love what he does, all of that stuff, but he can't single-handedly tank your defense. If you lose Jared Vanderbilt, you should be able to make up for him to a certain extent, right? Yeah. A minimum salary Cam Reddish can't sink your season and have Darvin be able to point to, like, well, we haven't had Cam in a long time. He's our best perimeter defender. That can't happen. And that's what happens though when you really limit your margin for error there in terms of the bottom line on your team.
Yeah. And when it talks about spending, I mean, for anybody that has these grandiose visions of, well, maybe they could, get Ty Lue in the offseason if the Clippers somehow let him go, and Bob Myers could come in and run the front office. Maybe we could dream for one, but not both. I mean, you're talking. Yeah. I mean, you're talking. At least $10 million a year for each one of those guys, and I think it's going to be tough for them to reach in their pockets for even just one of them. I mean, coaches. I mean, the salaries have gone up so much that sooner or later you're going to have to. But I don't know if they do it for both a coach and somebody to run the front office.
Especially because I don't think Pelinka is going anywhere. So, yeah. And Pelinka is one of the higher paid executives in the league. And so, like, if you are going to add to your front office, you can't pay whoever you add to your front office as much or more than Pelinka, because that person then becomes the loudest voice in the room.
Yeah.
So that's going to limit your talent pool as it is, right? Like, you have to bring in somebody with a quieter voice than Pelinka, essentially. And that's why, like, as much as I would die and go to heaven if they were able to bring Bob Myers in to help kind of fill out that rotation, the front office, and also I think improve the Lakers' standing around the league. Myers is a really, really respected guy around the league. Pelinka isn't as much, and I think that kind of that's really showed. Like, as much as everybody likes to harp on the Lakers tax, a part of that is like the Pelinka tax, and I think that is like I've heard some people say, and I've reported this previously, but I've heard people say that, like, he and Daryl Morey are the kinds of guys in your fantasy football league who, like, every time you get a trade proposal from, you just roll your eyes, right? Like, like, no, I am not going to give up Christian McCaffrey for your kicker, right? Like, that is not something I'm interested in doing. And I think that has kind of worn on some people. The Morey thing is also fast. Like as a quick aside, I think we're going to near a point here soon. He's had enough stars come out and say that he's stabbed them in the back that I think stars are going to stop going to Philadelphia. I'm really curious when they cut ties there.
By the way, if the Lakers ever got Bob Myers, I mean, what would we do with Kurt Rambis if he was not in the front office anymore? I mean, come on.
Yeah. Well,
Somebody find
Kurt's
Kurt a
never going
home.
anywhere.
Yeah, Kurt's never going anywhere.
He's
So,
not
yeah,
he's a made man so long as Genie is calling the shots.
yeah,
He's
absolutely.
all right. I'm going through our Twitter or our comment section here to see if we have any more questions. I've been here for 45 minutes and I do have to write this thing for Lakers Daily. So I think I'm going to go ahead and call this here early. But Brian, thank you for being my guinea pig. I greatly appreciate that. And this is something I'm going to look into why the stream didn't show up and see what went on there so that more of our lounge VIPs can hop on here as well. But Brian, thank you very much for hopping on. Thank you everybody for tuning in. The next time I think you guys will hear from me will be on Sunday for Monday's show. So until then, have a great rest of your day. Make somebody else's, and I will talk to you then. Thanks, Brian.
Thanks, man.